Hello everyone and welcome to Bicycle Touring Talk, episode 21. My name is George Schlakek and I am
the one and only.
The stories I'm telling you actually happened to me on my first major bicycle tour. You can read about them in Destinations Are Fake. Link is in the description below. Last week I told you about the first few days in Veracruz. I was in Costa Rica in a pretty nice hotel. I spent the rest of the evening relaxing indoors, enjoying a functional TV and researching the internet about various things, including my route to Veracruz, the port city. The next few days were going to be interesting. I was only a few kilometers from a world-famous archaeological site, El Tajín, a place I absolutely wanted to visit. The ride to the pyramids was surprisingly quick. For a few pesos, the parking lot attendant agreed to watch my bike. There was a ticket booth and a small entry fee, but viewing the ancient pyramids was definitely worth it. El Tajín had been a big city hundreds of years before the Europeans ever set foot on American soil. It had long been abandoned by the time of their arrival. For over 500 years it had been hidden in the jungle. Today, the pyramids and several other buildings have been restored, and new discoveries of ancient ball courts and other structures continue to be made. They are all even older than the Mayan ruins in other areas of Mexico. To top off the attractions, a group of acrobats in traditional outfits performed a kind of ritual dance while hanging from a rotating pole upside down, resembling a unique type of carousel. The spectacle was quite impressive and definitely worth attending. There were many tours at El Tajín, and I even met a couple from Canada. Having a conversation in English made me realize that I had been living completely in Spanish and was even beginning to think in that language. The next town on my journey was Papantla, not even 5 kilometers away. However, getting there was challenging. For the first time since the beginning of the trip, I encountered a hill too steep to climb with my loaded bicycle. I ended up pushing part of the way. It took a lot of effort to make sure the bike wasn't rolling backwards. Small steps did the trick. I was soaked in sweat by the time I arrived in Papantla. There was a big festival going on, and I found out that it was all part of La Guadeloupe. The event actually made it hard to find a cheap hotel. I eventually got lucky after asking around a bit. The room I found was cheap, but a far cry from the comfort I had enjoyed the previous night in Costa Rica. I spent most of my evening outside exploring. Papantla is a very unique place. The town is made up of 2 hills that are surprisingly steep even when walking. I first checked out the main plaza with its beautiful ancient church that was packed with people. Later, I went down the main street in search of a place to eat. It was easy to find. After the meal, I still could not get enough of exploring this town. After walking what seemed just like a few blocks, I had a fantastic view of the church and the sunset from another hill. Hundreds of people were gathering for the celebrations, and I felt lucky for being here just at the right time. I stayed out until late at night, feeling like I sort of belonged right here. Nobody seemed to notice that I was a tourist, except one older man who asked me if I was from the US. He didn't seem to know where Canada was, but made it very clear that he thought Mexico was much more peaceful than the US. While he probably had a point in some way, it turned out that his view of the US, and especially Canada, was very distorted. But see, when I really thought about it, my own view of Mexico had been completely wrong as well. We tend to form opinions about places based on secondhand information. I had never even heard of Papantla, but it is huge on my memory because of the atmosphere I experienced there. I left Papantla the next morning. The road led me back to the coast, which meant some amazing descents. A bike loaded with luggage is incredibly fast going downhill. It was a beautiful day and the beach looked simply irresistible. There was a string of hotels right by the ocean. I decided to pull into the yard of a beautiful hotel. Everything looked spacious and really well kept. Some people were sitting outside at a patio table. A man identified himself as the manager and asked if I was looking for a room. Sí, señor, busco una habitación. I turned around when he told me the price. I was just finding out that oceanfront hotels always cost more. I got very lucky this time around because the owner ended up giving me a sweet deal on a room with a defective air conditioner for just one night. Finally, I got to swim in the ocean and walk the beach. To me, it was paradise. Later that night, I met 2 other Canadians at the hotel who had jobs working on oil rigs in the Gulf Coast. Both of them thought I was crazy for cycling in Mexico. I told them that cycling in Canada was just as dangerous as around here, and I got laughed at over coronas. According to them, a lot of smuggling operations were happening at night on this very beach. I eventually just left to get some food at the nearby store. When I returned, I met a local couple who came to spend time at this hotel quite regularly. They had an entirely different take on cycling across Mexico and loved the idea. We had a long conversation, and by the end of it, I had a huge list of places to visit. As a result, I slept really well that night. My room had a king-size bed and a large TV that I tried watching for a while, but I passed out right in the middle of a program. The next day, after only a few kilometers, I reached a police checkpoint. Men in riot gear, armed with machine guns, were checking documentation. Others were tending to barriers made from sandbags. The whole scene looked like something from a movie. I was reminded of the 2 Canadians from the night before. Was I too careless on this trip? Those cops appeared to be ready for battle, and there had to be a reason. Suddenly, the fear I had felt before crossing the border was back. Well, it turned out to be just a routine check, and I didn't even have to show my passport. While I was at the checkpoint, talking to an officer, a minivan pulled up beside me. There were 3 people inside. A blonde lady behind the steering wheel, and a young couple. The window rolled down and the driver yelled,
Hey, how's it going? I'd love to talk to you after we clear this checkpoint.
A few minutes later, we were both sent on our ways, and I saw the van pull over just ahead of me. The lady introduced herself as Penny and told me about a turtle rescue station her and her friend were operating.
It's not too far from here, but the road may be a bit rough for a bite. Why don't you take your time and stop by for coffee?
That invitation was too good to turn down. I made my way along a rough but paved coastal road, through a village called El Raudal, and finally down a gravel road until I arrived at a gate. At first I was a bit hesitant. There was no sign on the gate. Had I found the right place? Then I saw the van. A few seconds later, Penny appeared.
Hey cool, you made it,
she said. Now the young couple I had seen with her also came out and introduced themselves as Julio and Lucy. It turned out that Penny and her boyfriend were running the turtle rescue station here, while Julio and Lucy were volunteers. Both were from Uruguay and spoke Spanish with a dialect that was hard for me to understand. Penny was originally from Finland and had done some bicycle touring across China several years earlier. We had indeed a lot to talk about. I felt right at home with my new friends who gave me a tour of the turtle rescue station, including a photo op with some baby turtles and a visit to the beach.
We walk the beach, sometimes all day, in order to look for turtle eggs and bring them to safety.
Penny explained.
This way we can make sure they actually hatch, before a predator can get them.
I liked the idea and wondered if more volunteers were needed. Penny must have sensed that just looking at me. Before I could even ask, she explained that the season had just about ended.
However, you're welcome to stay here for the night, if you want.
I simply couldn't say no. The evening that followed was one of the most memorable experiences of my entire tour. Julio, Lucy, and I walked back to the village in order to find some fisherman who was willing to sell us a good part of his catch. It was surprisingly easy, so about half an hour later we returned with a huge bag full of fresh fish. The beach near the turtle rescue station was full of driftwood. Penny had explained earlier that part of their job at the station was to keep the beach clear, to provide a safe path for the turtles to get back into the water once they were old enough to be released. That was why a lot of wood was piled up in one spot already. Driftwood is an excellent fuel and the sand makes a perfect base for it. We made a fire on the beach until there was enough charcoal to barbecue the fish. To go with it, we had rice, vegetables, and tortillas. It would have made a great meal anywhere, but on a private beach after dark, it tasted just so much better. After the meal, we shared some wine Penny had brought out, and just sat there chatting and gazing at the stars. Besides our voices, the ocean waves and some crackling from the fire were the only sounds to be heard. El Raudal had not even been on my map, but now it felt like I was always meant to be there, perhaps indefinitely sometime. Well, I left El Raudal the next day around the noon hour. It felt like I was leaving a group of close friends. Even after just one day, it was hard to say goodbye.
We might go to Veracruz tomorrow, perhaps we'll see you along the way.
Penny said when I left. I liked the idea, so for the next couple of days I kept my eyes open for the gray van. I did not see it again on the way to Veracruz. It took 2 more days to reach the port city, but they went by quickly. I enjoyed riding my bike in the sunshine without a worry in the world. Somewhere along the way I even found a hotel with a pool. When I finally got into the outskirts of Veracruz, I was blown away. The suburbs seemed endless and strangely different from other Northern American cities. At one point I had to cross a huge overpass. I remember stopping for a few minutes to take in the view. Every house had a water tank up on the roof. There had to be thousands of them. I had been warned many times not to drink or even brush my teeth with the water, the tap water that is, in Mexico, but had become a bit careless in that regard. While I was still drinking only bottled water, it was way too inconvenient to brush my teeth with it. So far, I had been doing fine, but experienced some occasional rumbling in my stomach and a very mild case of diarrhea. I eventually found a good hotel right in the center of the city, Hotel Monaco. My tiny room was on the 4th floor. At the reception, I was told that there was no space for my bike except in my room. The clerk, an attractive young lady, seemed surprised when I didn't mind hauling my bike up all those stairs. After my shower, I went out, exploring the city till dark. I liked Veracruz instantly. I decided right then and there to stay at least a few days. I had already paid the room for 2 nights, but there was no way that could be enough to satisfy my curiosity. After enjoying a good supper in one of the many restaurants to choose from, I returned to my room with a bag of tortilla chips and 2 cans of beer. Why not watch some Spanish TV to help me get fluent in Spanish? My stomach was now bothering me. It was simply refusing to digest the meal. Certainly a beer would solve that, right? I had just a couple of gulps and suddenly felt really sick. The beer had pushed me over the edge. I barely made it to the toilet to throw up my meal. I woke up the next morning with a headache that made it almost impossible to move. I was shivering and sweating all at the same time. This wasn't good. The TV was still going from the night before and provided an additional incentive to stay put. I stayed in bed until early afternoon. It took that long to gather enough energy to get up for a while and go outside to get some fresh air. There had to be something I could eat to nourish my aching body. It was pretty painful to descend 3 flights of stairs as my head was pounding with every step. Once on the street, I felt a little bit better, but only walked to the nearest convenience store, picked out some plain cookies and a bottle of Pepsi, and I was too sick to even go for a walk. So I returned to my hotel, paid for an additional 2 nights, and went back to bed. There you have it. Food poisoning had finally got me. Or was it something else? In the next episode, I'll tell you about my recovery and an unexpected twist that was about to change the nature of my entire journey. Will you join me for that? Why not subscribe and smash the like button so hard that it turns blue? I'll see you next time.